Ah, the classic destiny of Disney parents. A wonderful little messed up cliche, and I wouldn't know the difference. I legitimately never met my father. He'd left my mum when I was -6 months old. Very impressive. Even still, I'd wager a larger than average amount of parents are unalived before their kids reach adulthood in animated movies compared to real life, and it's frankly a little silly. And so today we're going to be discussing this exact parental fate. How much actually changes in animated movies if you resurrect otherwise dead parents? From categorically turning a story into a very quick speedrun, adding all the more complications, or spreading into a whole new timeline reality that has so many unfurling consequences, let's see what happens when we unalive some classic animated parents. But first, let's talk about the trope itself a little bit more. It seems like every animated movie studio under the sun has dabbled with the dead parents cliche. I'm confident that the dead parent ratio in animated movies is a lot higher than in real life, and there's no better way to prove my point than looking at some examples from the Disney catalog, shall we? Cinderella's father? Dead. Cinderella's real mother? Dead. Snow White's real mom? Dead. Belle's mom? Also dead. Hero's parents from Big Hero 6? Dead. Oh, and his brother too. Anna and Elsa's parents? The writers decided to let them go. Bambi? Bang bang. Mufasa? Well, Simba can try, but he ain't waking up. Cusco? He was explicitly raised by Yzma. Quasimodo? Here comes Judge Frollo. Finding Nemo? Oh no, Marlin's a single dad. What happened to the mum? Yeesh. Tarzan? Tar cannot find his parents because they're dead. You get the idea, right? It is a strong and consistent kind of fate that if you are a parent to a protagonist character in a Disney movie, either you or your spouse. Maybe it's a 50-50 coin flip sometimes. And these are just with Disney movies. I mean, there's a reason that the Disney Wiki has an orphans category that's 340 entries long, which is crazy considering they've only actually produced, give or take, about 63 animated movies. That is a big ratio. In reality, some of these entries are from live action franchises that they've bought, like Marvel and Star Wars, so, you know, that kind of will inflate the results, but the idea is still the same. It's clear that there is a higher average amount of parents left on the cutting room floor when it comes to fiction. And as absurd as this may all seem, it's a classic trope that has history since basically as far back as we've been telling stories, funnily enough. And in the present day, there are a number of different writing room related reasons why this cliche is used. Typically though, the use cases for this kind of trope fall into just two categories, depending on when exactly the death happens in the plot. The first scenario regards parents who die to kickstart the adventure, and are thus used as a device to get the protagonist moving along on their hero's journey. These parents are often offed at the very start of the movie, or sometimes even off-screen before it even begins. Usually, the absence of these positive authority figures is used as a means to push the protagonist into adventure, since there's nobody holding them back anymore. And sometimes, of course, this trope applies not just to biological parents, but to surrogate parents as well, or just generally a character that the protagonist looks up to. Now, sometimes the surprise survival of one of these parents is used as a plot twist later on in the movie or in the franchise, and to be honest, it's rare-ish enough that I don't have that strong an opinion on it. I don't think it's exactly lazy writing. How to Train Your Dragon did it. Am I gonna say that's lazy? I think I feel indifferent to the trope. It's just another trope, and really comes down to a case-by-case how well that kind of idea is presented. Are you a Frozen 2, or are you a How to Train Your Dragon 2? Perhaps if it became more common and popular, I would very quickly get sick of it, as a lot of people do with the general theme of parents dying in animated movies. It's a trope within a trope for sure, but when done well, it has led to some of the most famous and memorable movie moments ever.
I am your father. No!
When used poorly, however, it can very quickly cheapen the death of a character and really damage the narrative overall. On the other hand, sometimes parents are given breathing room to live well into the movie and then be killed. You know, for the plot. This second group of parental casualties die well after the adventure has already kicked off, so their death is used to increase dramatic tension. This tends to serve the death of a mentor function in the hero's journey. Sometimes in another subtrope, a parent is revealed to be evil or otherwise must be confronted, and sometimes they die there as a result. And these parents who die at the climax, I would say, are like a beefed up version of this killing the parents in the middle for dramatic tension kind of subtrope, especially if the protagonist is the one to face them or take their life. And I guess thinking about it, there is a secret third category too. That one being parents that aren't around because they literally do not exist. Yeah, try to wrap your brain around how that one works out first. This mostly comes to mind when it comes to Pixar films. Buzz Lightyear doesn't have parents telling him what to do because,
You are a toy!
And no, Star Command doesn't count, nor his assembly line, nor Andy. You can also argue it's because they're meant to sort of be adults, so it kind of doesn't count. Even Buzz Lightyear in Lightyear doesn't have parents because he's a man, you know? He doesn't rely on his father anymore. Kind of, well, in that movie it gets a little specific, you know, but maybe it was a bad example. You get the idea. And then we won't be getting into that third category much today. It is certainly fascinating to think about too hard, especially when it comes to Pixar and stuff. Honestly, it kind of deserves its own video. Even covering a single different Pixar franchise like Cars is just so messy and entertaining to try and break down. Who are the parents to the cars? Who made them? Were they built in a factory? How about Francesco Bernoulli, who has his mama in the crowd during his big hometown race in Cars 2? How does the Cars age? Why does the world building of Cars make no sense? Are the Cars even alive? Do Cars give birth? Why are they Cars? Anyway, let's get back on topic. Dead parents.
The whole being dead thing!
Even amongst the living parents, many of them are straight up just written out of the movies they belong to. Take Tangled, for example. That had Rapunzel abducted as a baby in service of the plot, and her parents are so irrelevant, never really made much of a difference at all whether they survived like they did in the movie or were just quietly axed. Other than like a scene or two of them looking sad that doesn't really add much to the movie. They don't do much of anything other than start the whole lantern thing, which could have been started by the townsfolk on their own, you know? They're not that needed in the plot, sort of. That being said, I do really like the king's facial hair. I suppose I am sort of glad he lived. I'd rather not rob the world of such a impressive beard and stash. Getting rid of Mother Gothel, on the other hand, obviously would change the plot in a massive dramatic way, but she's not Rapunzel's real mother, and to that end, it doesn't matter for the sake of the biological parent death toll. Even still, having Mother Gothel die very early in the film would change things dramatically. After all, Rapunzel growing up alone in the woods and/or Flynn finding Rapunzel's corpse in the tower would be a very different movie indeed. But I guess that's a speedrun of the bad ending for Tangled. Let's see where else we can take things. I've noticed that parents being alive has been a more popular approach to the problem of what to do with parents in animated movies recently, with both the Mario movie and Encanto kind of being the examples that stick in my mind as showing our protagonist having a very large, very alive family, but still writing out the parents from the movie's actual adventure plot. Even though Mirabelle's parents are a presence throughout the movie, Mirabelle herself is solving her problems on her own. Still, I would say this movie's focus on generational trauma emphasizes the need for parents to be relevant in a story like this. Contrast that to the Mario movie. Mario just gets flushed down a drain. Luigi gets flushed down a drain. Mario's dad does not get flushed down a drain. Moana is another interesting example, as in the case of the titular main character's parents, they are alive and well. Yes, narratively they are an obstacle to overcome for the adventure to actually begin, but Moana's separation from them is still what bucks the status quo and allows the adventure to actually start. Sure, Moana's grandma Tala does die, but I'd argue that serves more to further the death of a mentor trope rather than just the dead parents one. Though, I guess since her dad is alive, it is still another dead biological parent for an alive character. Yeah, sure, right then, add it to the dead parent tally. But anyway, what if Moana's parents died too? Would it actually change much at all? Honestly, I'd probably say no. Not really, probably not. Maybe, let's say, taking from the first style of parent deaths, Moana's parents were just killed off screen before the movie began. She's probably still gonna be longing for adventure. Maybe Grandma Tala would raise her. Maybe her island would be in worse shape with more focus on the politics behind who would be a leader, a la Frozen. But altogether, nothing really changes about the plot. Moana is on an island. Moana wants to go to ocean. Island is getting sick. Moana leaves island. Moana meets shape changer demigod played by a pro wrestler turned actor Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
You're welcome!
Moana goes on many small adventures with The Rock, including one where Moana achieves her teenage dreams and meets a YouTuber.
That's my grandma's. I ate my grandma.
Realistically though, I can't imagine that much is really different here, except one less force holding her back on her island. Even if her parents died in the middle of the movie, maybe by succumbing to the rot on the island or something, it really wouldn't change much since, you know, she's not there to see it. It could make the ending less happy, but altogether, really wouldn't do much. That is, unless we got a cool Lin-Manuel Miranda succumbing to the rot song. I actually kind of really want that now. Damn. Either way, it's pretty easy to see why the parents lived in Moana. The movie works with or without them. Still, just because Moana works exactly as is with or without parents, doesn't necessarily mean that other animated movies will feel the same fate on the narrative front. In fact, some stories would be entirely minimized if the parents actually died. Speedrunning, like that one meme of the book being shorter if they made one small change. Despicable Me is probably the funniest example I can think of there. The kids are already orphans, I know, so yeah, add that to the biological dead parents toll, I guess. And sure, Gru's biological family isn't really explored outside of his mum until later films, but like, come on. Imagine if Gru died in the middle of the movie. Anywhere. Maybe let's say Vector shot it down his ship during the dogfight, just a little bit too hard. The girls would be orphans again and would be back to square one. And the minions, they'd go find a new boss. Probably Vector or Elon Musk, give or take 10 years. That's it. Movie over. No moon stolen. The dance would probably continue, just more sadly and with less rehearsal time because they couldn't get out of their horrible orphan box. Vector's on top. The end. Hey there, thank you for making it to the halfway mark of this video. Come subscribe if you're interested in more video essays. I plan to do these pretty much weekly all through the year, so come join if you're interested. Right, back to the second half of talking about Disney and dead parents.
What? Parents?
On the other hand, if we made a different change and the three girls he adopted actually had parents, Gru's whole cookie plot could have very well ended before it began, and Gru would have needed another way into Vector's mansion. The movie thus would have lost practically all of its emotional weight, and that's funny. A more complicated change to me is resurrecting Lilo and Nani's parents in Lilo and Stitch. Sure, on paper, it might work all the same. Lilo is sad and bullied and doesn't fit in and wants a dog. She goes to get a dog with her family. Whoa, the dog she got is super weird. But let's be honest with ourselves. Nani as a character is the only reason any sane family would get Stitch as a dog, despite how odd he is. Nani is an incredibly complex character who feels like she is failing to be a mother figure to her little sister after the death of her parents, whilst also trying to look after herself, and her complex connection with Lilo is the only reason she allows that freak dog into her home in the first place. Even though it is a clear point of contention in the film. Their broken family is the entire reason the plot is able to work. If her parents were around, there is no way that they'd take Stitch on as their dog, let alone keep him, right? Sure, I guess they'd in a sense be happier, and then, what, Stitch blows up the world? I'd agree to that, unless you buy into the whole Cobra Bubbles conspiracy theory, which I mean, Cobra Bubbles clearly isn't a normal social worker. He's a former CIA agent who has a prior connection with aliens at the end of the first film. The theory goes that Lilo and Nani's parents were also CIA agents that died in the line of duty, and Cobra Bubbles, alien connection and all, was watching over them as a CIA agent in lieu of a real social worker. Which, I mean, it makes sense. If we go with this, then maybe, just maybe, Lilo and Nani's parents would have let Lilo adopt Stitch if they lived. But even still, this is a stretch. How many CIA agents do you know that let their kids have alien dogs? Not many, I'd bet. One final movie I'd like to have a look at changing today is one of my favorites of all time, The Incredibles. Where I would, once again, like to bump off the parents. But this time, we're not doing it in the first movie. Instead, it'll be the second. Dynamic, I know, it's not canon, let's just roll with it. I was honestly disappointed by the second Incredibles movie. It was one of the very first animated movies I actually hyped on this channel. I did a random Incredibles 2 trailer back in 2018, a year and a half before I did movie content, just to show you how hyped I was for that movie. And the actual end result was a sequel that lacked so much of the depth and the nuance of the first film. Instead of being a subversive film analyzing a society from the perspective of super people like the first movie, the sequel to The Incredibles just kind of did standard superhero stuff, and especially with the design of some of the new characters, pulled away from the distinct aesthetic of the first movie. I mean, to me anyway, out of context, Evelyn visually looks more like Agent Calhoun from Wreck-It Ralph than she does anyone from the original movie's cast. Background characters included. It's just kind of a bland movie that, despite having some good moments, overall falls flat of what it's trying to do. I felt like the movie really didn't have a story that it wanted to tell, it just wanted to be more Incredibles because it's Pixar's superhero movie and people love superheroes right now. And it doesn't exactly give me high hopes for the third movie. But hey, the Disney corporate machine cannot be stopped. That being said, I think the most disappointing thing about the second Incredibles movie is how close it was to being really good. I feel like there could have been a few ways to rewrite the second movie and make it truly great. And one of the main ways of doing that is refocusing on the family drama and having the family forced to reconnect. It's one of the most satisfying, relatable parallels and themes of that first movie. They're just a relatable family doing family things while being supers. And the moments of family conflict within, for example, Bob being forced to parent while Elastigirl is away being a hero, are really funny and charming. And marketable for that matter. I'm looking at you, Cookie Num Num sequence. These are the parts of the movie where it truly excels. In fact, the moments of family drama are where The Incredibles excels in general. The cave scene in the first movie following the plane crash is truly such a visceral, stake-setting scene. And I think if we were to rewrite this plot, one crazy version that Disney would absolutely never do would be a change that would really need to center in on these elements especially. And I see no more of a dynamic way of doing that, hypothetically, than by killing Elastigirl. Not off-screen, of course, not in the beginning of the movie. Have it be in the middle. Have it hurt. Helen has already gone away on her mission, living the career superhero life that Bob has only dreamed of, succeeding in all sorts of ways and getting all of these accolades and attention. Bob is jealous, and though he already has done some of the same things essentially in the prior movie, he is now seeing Helen's side of things through parenting the kids while she's away. It's hard. He's trying, but it's beating him up. Just like the movie had originally written, this is all identical to the movie as it stands at this point. But then, during her first encounter with Screenslaver, Helen is killed. How or why? You can find all sorts of ways to do it in a good fashion. It's not exactly the best look to have, hey, female character superhero goes out first and then dies alone. There's some tones you gotta work out. Maybe it's more of a thing of the management team screwing her over in some way, or just being, if you excuse the pun, stretched too thin on different antics. However you do it tastefully, of course, and then once you do, we really get into the meat of the matter. Bob only receives notice of this through a call from Helen's workplace. He's devastated. The kids watch him slump over and ask what's wrong, and all that he can get out is that it's your mom. I won't do an American accent. It's your mom. She's dead. Jack's sad despite not really knowing what's going on. Does he work as comic relief in that kind of tone of a movie scene? I don't know, but he's there, I guess. Screw it, we've gone this far, let's double down into it. We cut to Helen's funeral. The kids are really bonding with their father through their grief, and we get to see the personal side effects of vigilante work as it really pries open the why supers should be legal argument again. Bob is grief-stricken. Edna Mode approaches Bob at the funeral. She, despite being a comic relief character, has a genuine heart-to-heart scene with Bob, reminiscent of the heart-to-heart-ish scene that she had with Elastigirl in the first movie, but with, I guess, less comedy this time. She talks about Helen's trailblazing as a female superhero, and Bob talks about her as a person, a wife and a mother. And then it's here where he decides he's gonna finish what she started. And Edna makes him a new suit, you know, for marketability and all that. Maybe a new design, maybe harkening back to the old classic, back to the golden era, the nostalgic days, an old bluey type of suit. And as she leaves, a broken, determined Mr. Incredible stands there, weighted down now by the reins of mandatory parenting job, doubled down with the superhero vigilante work they're going to take up as well now. And then you reveal that the kids were listening in too, and they want to join. Bob refuses to lose them too, very much a mirror of this I work alone moment from the first movie. And then we see Bob as he gets a new suit montage. Meanwhile, the kids contact Frozone to help them babysit since they're left with Jack, and they're gonna seek out Screenslaver on their own. Frozone refuses to babysit but understands the stakes and takes Jack and the kids to Edna Mode, which would still give us the original Jack with Edna sequence of the original movie. We get new matching suits for all of them too, because, come on, it would be incredibly marketable that way. Seriously, how did Pixar miss up on this, actually? If Elastigirl gets a new suit, why doesn't literally everybody? I know it's like a cursed suit, but still. Marketing, man, what are you doing? But either way, the end of the movie comes together with Bob, Frozone, and the kids crossing paths, all trying to take down Screenslaver, and our remaining family members growing closer and honoring Helen's memories. We want this to be a classic Pixar tearjerker. The end of the movie is roughly the same as before, taking down Screenslaver and getting supers re-legalized, but this time with a speech from Violet to Evelyn about how taking the life of Helen means she's not any better than the bad guys who killed her dad. Some narrative cyclicism in there, and could be reflective of a speech that Violet couldn't say at the funeral because of nerves and shyness if we're resetting characters anyway. Maybe here's the chance she can tell a speech over her mum's dead body. That wasn't quite the tone I was going for, but you get the idea. A speech at a funeral, a eulogy. Either way, very dark, very crazy, but it would be a parental death shoved into another movie that would make massive changes for the ideologies, the themes, and the directions of the kids affected in said movie. Even a movie based on just the super kids, while both parents are dead and the whole adult generation's gone, in some future 30 years from now sequel, has so much it could run with that I know Disney are not going to do. Now maybe if the film is way far too dark at this point for a Pixar movie, you then reveal that Helen is still alive here. And now you introduce the mind control goggles. We can introduce the other mind controlled supers here as well, and the end of the movie can play out as it is. Whether or not Helen is actually left dead at the end of the movie, the ending would be so much sweeter with the family coming together and being sure to value each other even more because their family is the most precious thing. That's meant to be the core theme at the center of The Incredibles. And this just goes to show that character deaths can be used effectively to really drive home the point of a narrative or its messages. The original Incredibles killed off tons of superheroes that we didn't know, and that scene really transformed the stakes of the original movie. The sequel could have killed off one that we did, and that could have really pushed the movie's intended messages about the importance of familial love and of loss. I think this is the real reason why parental deaths are so prominent. It's a universal sign that things have changed, that the status quo has shifted. Love them or hate them, they're probably a trope that's here to stay. I think, however, writers being poignant about when and where to use them can help our movies be impactful, while also not feeling cheap. At the end of the day, the parent deaths that matter the most are the ones where the story could not function without them, and where they serve to improve the overall value of the narratives they are a part of. But what do I know about the impact of parents?
I never knew my father!
And on that note, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video essay, and I shall see you all in a little bit.